Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Iceberg journey. Hopefully weekly once again, unless if another state of play happens, which I don't think it will. Now of course, this is a new part, so please make sure that you've already gone to support Bumbles. Link very top of the description, like always.
When Yu-Gi-Oh! Almost died. This is a good topic to start with. The end. Like any property, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gone through peaks and valleys.
Well, yeah, you could say that about basically anything in this world. There's always going to be a rise, always going to be a fall. Just enjoy the moment that you're in. That being said, it would be a shame if Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't exist in the current world. I wonder though. Now it makes me think, like in an alternate timeline where Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't exist, would there be like a big card game that sort of replaces it? Would a different card game that currently exists kind of take its place? Or, I don't know. There's many different scenarios where things could happen. It's just a what-if thing.
For every YCS with record high attendance, there's one with record low attendance. It's not immune to the same thing that plagues all hobbies. But when Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a down period, you feel it. Other TCGs have alternate formats you can switch to if the main one isn't to your liking, but with Yu-Gi-Oh! Only recently embracing alt formats and not near to the level that, say, Magic supports Draft or Commander, you kinda just have to suffer. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are a resilient bunch. We've survived multiple worst formats of all times, and the player base has largely remained unchanged.
I wonder by like almost died how small we're talking about when it comes to the attendance for the game. Cause it makes me think of, like for an FGC comparison, the Melty Blood fans out there, who I don't know if the story is true and I might be getting some of my details mixed up here, but wasn't there a time at EVO where, you know, Melty Blood wasn't even on any side stage at all, so they just had to set up their own tournament, basically, in the bathroom? I feel like I've heard something like that. Might have just been a rumor. But I don't think, even at its lowest point, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was that obscure.
The only time there was a noticeable flux is when new summoning mechanics are introduced, and the Yugi Boomer generation moves up one. There are 2 years, though. 2 of the worst years in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history, where thanks to the degradation of the game and improvement of other options, it could be said that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was close to losing its spot in the top 3 card games.
What's Dark Warriors?
The lesser of these, but
just
still
generic
a
Dark
terrible
Warriors,
time for the game, was 2018. 2018 was near the
2018.
tail end of the Link era, right before the era's first good format in Toss. The Link era was meant to slow the game down by introducing Link monsters that would mean that decks could no longer spam loads of extra deck monsters that put up a million negates that made for unfun one-sided games. The problem is that not only did Links not accomplish this by way of making Link monsters who could also put up a million negates,
yeah, I was questioning that, raised an eyebrow to that, because I feel like the Link monsters are kind of the thing you go into in order to set up those boards a million negates. Was that the initial plan, and then it all just kind of went away when we designed certain cards, like say, Appaloosa? And she's not even like the most problematic one, but you just see her being used pretty generically in most decks.
It actually had the opposite effect, as Link monsters having insanely generic materials meant that vomiting out a million guys got you an insanely strong board of generic Links. The biggest culprit for why this era sucked so much is getting his own entry later on, but there were so many monsters that you would hate to see. Isold, Summon Sork, every single nightmare, and especially Topologic Gumblar Dragon. If not for Toss, Link would have easily been the worst era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Overall.
Okay, let me quickly read what this one does. I've never seen Topologic Gumblar Dragon before. It only requires 2+ effect monsters, and it makes your opponent discard their cards. If they have none left in their hand, they take 3,000 damage. Isn't this kind of just a different way to get into Yatta? I mean, it's not really as strong as Yatta, but it's incredibly annoying for sure.
Even beating out historically ass eras like GX. Decks in mid-2018 came in 2 variants. Either hand loops using Gumblar and the Dark World monsters, or FTKs. Gem Knight existed as an FTK deck,
Ah,
and wasn't stopped
yeah.
because it wasn't even the best FTK deck.
I do recall Gem Knight being an FTK deck back in its heyday. I'm sure it could still do that. It probably still can, even in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, but there's probably plenty of ways to stop it by now.
There were decks like Danger with multiple FTK variants. You could play Cannon Soldier. You could play Slash Draw. You could even beat a child. At the London 2018 YCS,
Don't do it.
Yu-Gi-Oh! World Champion Jesse Cotton used a Danger Dark World deck against a child. Not a young player, an 11-year-old little boy. How these two could have possibly been matched up together is a mystery, but
Yeah, how the hell? What is happening? He's also on stage, well, it is round 1, so I guess somehow the seeding ended up this way. But man, poor Matthew over here coming in with other deck versus Danger Dark World. Honestly, if I was Jesse, I'd feel kind of bad, but also, I'm here to win, so sorry, kid.
it makes for the most uncomfortable and embarrassing Yu-Gi-Oh! Game of all time, as the announcers desperately try to make it seem like this isn't the worst game in the world. Based on the cards the kid is using, it's obvious he just got a structure deck, opened some packs, threw it together, put it in a sandwich bag, and brought it to the YCS. And
He's trying to
now
have
he's
fun.
staring down the worst deck in the format. So,
Yeah.
what could you be playing if you didn't want to hand loop or FTK your opponent? Wow, Fourth Reich! I had rejoined Yu-Gi-Oh! During the Link era, after exiting at the beginning of the Xyz era, and just pretending pendulums didn't happen, so I got to witness this format firsthand. And now having lived through the next 7 years of the game's history, for as bad as you think Kashtira, or Snake Eye, or Malice Ryziel formats were, mid to late 2018 was worse. As I
Okay. I mean, I can't verify that information because I wasn't there for that. What I experienced was the Kashtira Telements era, and it felt pretty bad, but I suppose to at least be fair to the format, there were cards to counter said strategies within the same format. So as long as you were building around it, you could still play the game. I'm sure that there were definitely certain eras where it felt kind of impossible to face against your opponent, unless you were playing the same deck and probably got to go first.
joined the community, tons of people left. So sorry. There was a format before this, one that was even worse, and came at the worst possible time. 2012 was a shaky time for Yu-Gi-Oh! Xyz, despite being easier to wrap your head around than Synchros, since you just had to recognize the number of stars like a preschool assignment, was not popular among the fanbase. They either didn't like it because new thing bad, or because of 3 decks that nearly killed the game.
It's interesting. Maybe I also fall into this category without really realizing it. But where does the whole new thing bad come from? Personally, when I play Shadowverse at least, whenever a new mechanic gets introduced, I'm super into seeing what it will do and trying to learn and think of different combinations I can do to make it work in my favor. But I say maybe I end up falling into that same trap because of the way that I thought of stuff what I mentioned earlier with Kashtira and Tearlaments. I guess it's a matter of I want to play this deck, but it doesn't work against these other decks. Even with all the things that I could tech into it, the strategy just isn't good. But it's my favorite. And because the new era makes it so I can't really play it, then I hate the new thing. That's probably the thought process.
Inzektor, a powerful insect deck that plowed through boards and gained insane advantage.
Play the story
with
mode for Inzektor.
Dragonfly, and Hornet. Wind Up, which had the insane gimmick of every card being a soft once per turn, and Dino Rabbit, a deck that used the newly released Rescue Rabbit to convert 2 normal dinosaurs into the powerful Evilzar, Logia, and Dolka. These 3 decks were all that was worth playing. The only thing that kept them in check was each other, and anything daring to step into their realm was chewed up and spat back out.
Yeah.
The problem, though, was that these 3 decks sucked. They were good.
Really?
But they were boring. Either
There
you
you
watched
go.
Hornet hop back and forth from grave to field as your own field was picked apart card by card, watched Wind Up steal your entire hand with Wind Up Hunter, or watched Rescue Rabbit hit the field and then sighed. And to actually play this boring game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you were shelling out a lot of money. All 3 of these decks had major price cards. Even Dino Rabbit, which used normal monsters, had expensive cards. Sabersaurus was about a $10 card. It's a normal monster, it doesn't do anything! This was a dire...
Just to have, like, the right levels in order to get into Evolves or Lagia or whatever its name is. I do recall seeing that card before, but I don't think it's really seen a whole lot of play when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But, you know, like, it's the business strategy. You make certain decks that are new, that people have to buy, that are going to be played within the current meta, and you just up the price of them a little bit in order to entice people to spend a bit more so that they can play within the format. But there's always going to be a point where it goes a little too far, and that threshold will be different for different people depending on many factors within their life. The biggest one being disposable income. Like, not everybody has that. And I guess the other factor being, well, the amount of fun that a deck can offer. So if the mechanics themselves aren't great, and the interactions with your opponents don't seem very fun to the majority of the player base, then I think we've likely failed in card design. Well, actually, in the latest expansion of Shadowverse, at least at the time of recording this video, they introduced what is basically like an RNG gambling mechanic to the game. And that made me actually quit playing Shadowverse ever since this expansion launched, essentially. Like, I just uninstalled the game. It was not fun. So yeah, these mechanics really need to be thought out. These interactions need to be fun and engaging. And if they're not, and they don't really, I guess, emphasize what Yu-Gi-Oh! Or whatever card game you're playing is about, then, yeah, people are going to drop your game. They're not going to play.
Format, and Konami had the chance to adjust it and fix the problems players had. Sure, a lot of the cards were from newer sets like Order of Chaos and Photon Shockwave, but this couldn't be allowed to fester. The ban list came around in March of 2012, and the decks hit were Plant Synchro and Agents.
What?
2 decks that by this point were completely rotated out, and were now dead for no reason. Worse yet, this was a uniquely bad ban list, since it included, for the first time, reasons as to why cards were limited. See, unlike most other card games where ban lists come with reasonings as to why the cards were hit and what they want the format to be, Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't do that, except for this March 2012 ban list. And when we saw what was banned, and more importantly, what wasn't banned, the message couldn't come through any clearer. Konami was not gonna change anything. People had had enough. They started looking for other games to play. And at the worst time possible for Konami, Cardfight Vanguard started and soaked up that lost player base.
Okay. Always been kind of interested in learning about Vanguard. I don't know anything at all about how the game is played, but I do think some of the card art for Vanguard is pretty cool. Actually, I feel like I mentioned this in an earlier part in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Iceberg videos. But anyways, like, I do know that there's a Vanguard game being sold on Steam, although some of the reviews for that are not great, so I don't really know where I should begin my journey in Vanguard, if I ever do. Although, I'm sure that there's probably some, like, beginner introduction stuff here on YouTube made by people who play Vanguard, so maybe I'll look into that.
There's a direct correlation between the fall in Yu-Gi-Oh! Players during wind-up format and the rise in players at the beginning of Cardfight Vanguard's life. Even more than the exodus during 2018, this was the closest Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever came to death. Attendance at events was at an all-time low. Products were selling slower than ever, and a new competitor was coming in and nipping at their heels. It was grim. Will the formats we're suffering through right now ever reach these lofty depths? We can only pray not. Free Stratos. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list is supposed to be a force for good in the game. Sometimes cards are either born broken or get broken when new cards come out that work with them in unintended ways, but the only way to preserve the player base is to get them out. As we just saw though, the ban list doesn't always do its job. Whether that's by a new card being too new to get out of the format, or Konami ignoring it on purpose, it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. Out of all the cards who have ever served a tour of duty on the ban list, though, there's one that surpasses them all. Both in terms of its length and its audacity. Elemental Hero Stratos. Stratos is a wind warrior monster who belongs to the hero archetype, who on top of a pretty good back row destruction effect, has the ability to grab any hero monster from your deck when it's summoned. That's Elemental, Destiny, Evil, Masked, Vision. Grab Entertainment Hero Pit Boss, who cares? Stratos' effect to search on summon was a breakthrough in Yu-Gi-Oh! As big an effect as Cyber Dragon being able to summon itself, or the gadgets replacing themselves when summoned. Stratos ushered in a new era with his introduction, where any monster that searched on summon was now called a Stratos. The value of Stratos was understood instantly, especially since he was born with a bounty on his head. See, Stratos was immediately clocked as the best hero card, and as such is one of a very small pool of cards to be released on the ban list. In America, Stratos was put on the limited list the same day he was released on April 21st, 2007, when he was released as a Shonen Jump promo card. Even at one copy, Stratos was still a powerhouse. Either great to see in your opening hand, or mana from heaven if you drew him off the top. In every hero variant he was alive to see, like Gemini Heroes, Bubble Beat, Little City, Diva Heroes, Omni Heroes,
Diva Heroes,
Stratos was always there. He was way too good to consider cutting. That was until Konami made the choice for players and banned Stratos in 2013 on September Wait, Stratos was banned on my birthday? What the hell is wrong with me? I'm ruining Yu-Gi-Oh! Stratos' banning at the time was considered random. The list he was a part of, the September 2013 ban list, was a slaughtering ground for the two decks that defined Dragon Ruler format. The rulers themselves, and spellbooks. All of the baby Dragon Rulers, Spellbook of Judgment, Super Rejuvenation, Monster Reborn, Pot of Avarice, Solemn Judgment, Heavy Storm? It'd be easy to miss that Stratos was even hit with how much the game had been shook up. Why Stratos was banned now of all times was even more in question, as Hero was at best a rogue strategy at the time. Sure, it took down YCS San Jose that year, but really? That's what you're worried about?
I mean, yeah, it's a very powerful card because it can basically become any of the heroes within your deck. But especially if Hero isn't completely dominating the current format, then I don't know why you would be scared of that. Was there like some sort of internal testing and they found that it was like way too consistent if it wasn't limited? It's just such a weird decision. And I don't think we'll ever really know why they decided to limit it like this, but it's not the first time that they made some strange choices.
Free Stratos is a community meme that sprouted up in the years following his banning. Every time heroes got new support, or ban list season came around, people would cry out for Stratos to get off the ban list, with the joke evolving to the idea that Stratos was being kept in prison by Konami. An especially popular saying during this time was, "Free my N-word, Stratos." I'm not going down that way. You can't get me down that way. I've trained my whole life to not go down this way. I know who's in Paris. I know who the jabronis are. I know who's doing Aegis Reflector. It's not gonna work! In the time before his unbanning, Hero was languishing, as the best thing they could do was Dark Law Turbo, sliding the opponent $5 in dimes to not remove it, or they would have nothing. Stratos could have been let off the list at any point between his banning and unbanning and have done nothing to the metagame. Maybe made Hero a little bit more rogue than it already was, but it remains as maybe the strangest case of Konami holding a card hostage on the ban list, despite its relative power level. And when it finally did come off, it was in the middle of the Link era, where heroes were the worst they had ever been, so
No.
you, Jaden. At least it's good in Duel Links! Now, thanks to the hundreds of thousands of people playing every day from all over the world, the thousands of videos of replays, deck profiles, and strategy guides, the hundreds of articles written about the game and all the decks available to play, people have bought into this idea that Duel Links is real. It is not. Duel Links is a figment of our imagination. A Mickey Mouse bullshit version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Created by a jokester who never played the game before. That's the only way to explain how the meta shook out the way it did over multiple points of the game's history. Duel Links card pool is a very, very interesting discussion, because the intended lower power level of the game meant that Konami had to be very discerning about what was introduced into the game. At the dawn of Duel Links, a 1700 attack vanilla level 4 in Axe Raider was considered UR worthy.
Yeah.
Reinforcements was a super rare. An additional 500 attack points was seen at the same level as cards that would come out later, like Pot of Avarice and Nightmare Phoenix. We are equals! A side effect of this lower power format is that lower power cards were allowed to flourish in ways they never could under the crushing weight of actual good cards.
There are a lot of things that I played in Duel Links that I would never be able to play in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply because the format is different, and obviously, as Bumble says, the power level is just way, way lower. Like, I was actually having some pretty good success with Magician Girls, of all things. And, you really can't play that in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know what the general consensus about it is, but I do think it's kind of refreshing that at the very least, it's a different format, and you get to experience the game in a new and unique way. Play certain strategies that you never would have otherwise.
Single cards that were way better in Duel Links than they ever were in any other format were the series of cards that say, I don't die this turn. Battling Boxer Veil, White Princess, Kiteroid, and especially Sphere Karibo were played for years, since surviving with only 4,000 life points was extremely important. And so cards like this were vital to the game's enjoyability. Except when they were used against me, no skill scum-sucking bastards! As for decks that saw more success in Duel Links than they ever saw anywhere else, Amazon was the earliest deck in Duel Links that just exploded in playability when they didn't have to deal with stuff like Trick Stars, Goki, and Firewall hand loops like they did when they got their good cards. Amazoness Princess was able to search out powerful cards like Amazoness Onslaught on top of summoning monsters from deck in the battle phase. That Onslaught you searched turned all of your Amazonesses into DD Warrior Ladies, which Duel Links was not ready for. As a result, Amazoness went on a world destruction tour, with multiple of their cards being limited for a very long time. A similar deck was Cyber Angels, a deck that didn't see print for years after their introduction in the GX anime.
Okay, I did actually play Cyber Angels during my time playing Master Duel. They can work. You just gotta make sure you get the right card to do starter cat, or else you're screwed. You could say that about any deck, though. Thematically, they're really cool, though, in my opinion.
The ability for each of the lower level rituals to accrue advantage when tributed for their boss monster, Cyber Angel Dakini, was game-changing. And Dakini herself had the powerful ability to remove monsters from the field without destruction. Nephthys, when paired with the Fire King cards, was such an unstoppable strategy that people attribute its success in Duel Links to be the reason it eventually got support in the pack Hidden Summoners. Speaking of deck build packs, Fur Hire was able to see massive success in Duel Links upon release.
I mean, if I recall Fur Hire's abilities, it was like summoning more and more Fur Hires out of deck. So being able to do that consistently in Duel Links, I think would be definitely a win.
Without Sky Striker immediately smacking it down, the deck was able to rampage through the Duel Links landscape. A deck whose gimmick is, there's a lot of us, and we're going to make it a problem, had no problems in a format like this.
Yeah.
Triamids, Aroma, Red Eyes, and Vengeance. Decks that never got a second look.
Man, haven't thought of Tri-Mid for a very long time. I did also build this one. Thematically, it's pretty neat. They don't really do a whole lot, not in the modern game, but yeah, I could definitely see them making short work of Duel Links here.
Had all eyes on them in Duel Links. Then there's the fucking devil of Duel Links, Shiranui. Shiranui
Really?
is the deck
Shiranui?
with the biggest disparity in power levels between the real game and Duel Links. In the real game, drop dead awful. Never
Yeah,
saw play,
they don't do a whole
and
lot.
the fans it has
Not
wince
enough-
at the
not
idea
enough,
of
at
having to
least.
play it. Read Shiranui Samurai Saga and tell me there's anything worth saving in this deck besides Solitaire. Well, in Duel Links, you'd swear the Shiranuis had new effects because they were unstoppable. It wasn't like they went into a weak meta. No, they fought Kristrons, Karakuri, Witchcrafters. Those were actual good decks. And Shiranui just mugged them. Why?
Damn.
Well, it can synchro summon out of the graveyard. They do have a few good monsters like Squire and Solitaire, and Sun Saga, for as much guff as I give the extra deck, is a really good monster. Shiranui was the deck that ran me out of Duel Links. I stopped playing so much just because Shiranui was such an omnipresent deck. I survived 6 Samurai format. I can't do this again.
That is fair. I too get a little bit bored when I will play a card game, and the format is just so saturated by a singular thing that I don't really get to see a variety anymore, and it's just always constantly battling the same thing. I'm sure some people can find enjoyment from, building a deck around it, because for a fact most people are going to be playing it, so you can, overcome that meta oppression. But I'm just the type of person who enjoys variety, if you couldn't tell from my YouTube channel's content.
Then there was the question of what Shiranui variant you were facing. Was it vanilla?
Oh, there's multiple variants?
Trap heavy? Grass Shiranui? Add on the powerful generics like World Legacy Clash and Enemy Controller, and it was impossible to get anything done against them. I remember being in the community at the time, and there were prayer circles going, begging that they didn't get any more of their support, like their Icarus attack, Shiranui's style Swallow Slash. And they did! And years
Bruh.
later, when they got their Link monster and a brand new skill made specifically for them due to their impact on Duel Links' meta, they were meta
Holy.
again! Historic Duel Links formats seem like such a fun thing to explore given how unique the game really was.
That's like a different
Then you run
timeline,
into
essentially.
the problem of, do you really want to play against a deck like Slash Dragon Control again? The Rada Effect. Not often that we find a fact that hates that it's a fact. The Yugi-tubing community is a vast ocean of different personalities and comedic styles. So of course, every channel has their own inside jokes and references. If you watch MBT, you're likely to hear about the blank community, stemming from an incident where he ran afoul of the Ghost Trick community.
The gay community.
After he played a Ghost Trick deck that Ghost Trick fans didn't feel captured the spirit of the deck, i.e. he was winning games, they came down on him
What?
with thunderous disapproval. There's about a dozen
Why?
inside jokes stemming from Progression series. Banishing a Light and a Dark for how common they used the Chaos monsters, Gage thinking Verdant Sanctuary was a field spell, Kaloot for game, so many more I can't even name. Popping
I mean, there's always going to be those sort of things where it's like an inside joke for a community. And it's really cool. These things will just naturally form over time. Like some of you guys during some of our live streams may randomly hear one of us say, I blame Draco and stuff like that. And none of you are going to understand that. It's only like us regulars, a group of friends who hang out in VC and the Legit Weebs hangout server. But I do think it's important when it comes to building a community to have that sort of shared joke together.
The baby from the Dino Smashers Fury entry is a meme in Farfa's community, namely reciting the joke to make him mad. The easiest thing to do in the world. One Yugi-tuber, though, stands above the rest when it comes to running jokes, and that's Rada Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! See, Rada's funny, so he's already on a whole different axis to most Yugi-tubers. His content is almost exclusively
Damn.
scripted. which means that where most YouTubers rely on good chemistry and improv to keep jokes up, Rada gets to take a whole different approach. As far as running gags go, take your pick. His treatment of Totally Awesome, the hyping up of Abaki, the one whose shape was snatched, Ojama Lime. However, what we're talking about is the only one of these jokes he can't control, and that's the Rada effect. What the Rada effect is that if Rada makes a joke about a deck, the deck usually gets support a little while after he makes the video.
Wait, what? Are you just saying that he's a prophet? He just has such great timing to things. It's always really funny when those things happen by coincidence, by chance. Like, inevitably something is going to line up, but if it keeps on happening, then maybe there's something to it. The closest thing I can think of, at least here on this channel, it hasn't become that yet. There's probably still gonna need to be like a couple more predictions that end up happening. But like, when Serby and I were checking out basically Arxis games, we were at the time looking at BlazBlue. And then at the very same time, we had just recently got into Marvel lore. All of a sudden, something people never expected, whatever happened in their lifetime, happened with the release of Marvel Tokon. Arxis, of all companies, collabing with Marvel. And actually, a couple of days before that announcement for Marvel Tokon, Serby and I were talking about how it would be so cool if Arxis made a Marvel game. But then we were like, yeah, well, you know, Capcom and Marvel have a long-standing relationship with each other, and so it's never gonna happen. But then it did. Yeah, that reveal was completely out of left field. Crazy. Had no idea that was gonna happen. So hey, if we cover some other thing and it ends up mixing with another thing that we have to be covering on the channel at the same time, then maybe there will be something to it. Until then, we shall see.
The earliest case of this happening is in his triple feature on Legacy of the Worthless, where he covered BES, a notoriously underwhelming archetype. A few days later, on Christmas Day no less, they would reveal BEF Zalos, the BES field spell, which prompted Rada to make another video about it. This would happen again with the release of Vampire Sucker, to the same day of the anniversary of Zalos' release. Viacroids, Amazoness, Trains, all seeing their stocks increase thanks to Rada talking about them. Now, this is a phenomenon that both the community and Rada himself put little stock into. I mean, it's a stretch to say that every archetype Rada covers gets support because of his attention. Oh wow, he predicted Blue Eyes is finally gonna get support? Did he also predict the Sunrise? He's done 75 different Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos, sometimes covering multiple topics in each. If we disqualify all of those decks, there's an ever-shrinking pool he can't claim credit for. That said, I don't know, there's something going on here. Like in the Buster Blader video, he called for the printing of Declaration of Rebirth. And it happened. He asked for a card that gave all the Malefic monsters training wheels. And it happened. In the triple feature between Chemicritters, Digital Bugs, and Triamids, when talking about Triamids, he makes a comment about how the deck would be better if they merged all three field spells into one. But they haven't made a polymerization for field spells. That comment was made on May 25th, 2021. November 4th, 2021... They did it! The card Ursartic Dryatron banishes the two decks' respective field spells to summon out a fusion monster. It's a field spell polymerization. He later pinned a comment saying that this was out of his control, but I'll be damned if I don't try to capitalize on it. Oh, greatest of the rank tens, I beseech thee, grant me the knowledge that I beg of you. When are the Dark Scorpions getting support?
Oh, is that a Stallfall? What is that?
Did you know Wizardmon wasn't actually a Digimon at first?
Wait, really?
Yeah, no, he was actually from a different Bandai virtual pet line called Magical Witches that Kenji Watanabe also made art for, so they folded it into Digimon and said he hopped over from a parallel digital world called Witchelny, kinda like the alcoholic dad Tamagotchi that got repurposed into Nanimon.
No kidding. Huh.
Neat.
Say, can you, meme up some of that Metaphys support?
Can you suck my ass?
Why do people keep saying that to me?
It's a great bit. But yeah, said it earlier, it's always fun to have those inside jokes within a community. Or things happen, it creates a sense of community and connection. And we all know this because, we follow the same streamer or same YouTuber. Or we enjoy the same thing. I always love these things as long as it's not the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, we all collectively hate this person, so we actively go and attack them all the time. I see. Maybe I don't want to be a part of this community.
X Stevens. Now, I don't plan on covering a lot of individual YugiTuber topics here. I think that the wider look at the community I did in its own dedicated section is more than enough to call it a job well done. Besides, if you wanted to get into more of the specific dramas, feuds, and controversies in the YugiTubing space, you'd be better served reading or watching a YugiTubing Iceberg, which I have no interest in making.
Yeah, I also don't really have any personal interest in watching that myself. Drama has its place. I don't want to be at that place. Like, sure, sometimes it could be a great conversation starter, but to delve into it all the time, not my thing. I guess point being, I just don't really care. Like, if it doesn't personally affect me, then who cares who said what, and what they said, and what happened afterwards? It's all hearsay. At the end of the day, I'm just here to enjoy life.
That said, if I do end up covering a topic involving YugiTubing all on its own, like the Rada effect, it's going to be interesting. And that's what we have with X Stevens. Now, X Stevens is part of a subgroup of YugiTubers who make Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan series. Instead of talking about the card game, they'll make these creative works that emulate the anime. There are some that are live action, others that are animated, but they all largely follow a similar plot to the original anime. A hero and their friends fighting off evil through a card game. Some people think they're cringe or weird, but it's no different from making fanfiction. A lot of these series can have production value behind them, and trust me, scripting out an interesting duel is harder than it sounds.
Perfect pause, by the way. I think the only time I would ever really criticize somebody's work, unironically being cringe, is if it's, let's say, harmful. I suppose, as a creator myself, from my perspective, everything that you make, there's always got to be a little bit of cringe to it. There's got to be things where you probably could have said it more better, like this particular sentence here, and maybe you wish you had articulated your point a bit better, but also curse yourself for not being good at your second language. But putting yourself out there isn't easy, and you kind of put yourself out there to face the criticism of the general public, and I just think that the fact that you've committed to that to this degree is already praiseworthy enough. Whatever criticism I have about a particular piece of media or something that someone created is never going to be as much worth as, the creation itself and the effort that it took to make that thing. However, I also know very well that the internet is not a kind place, and nuance does not exist anymore, so yeah, I'm sure they probably face a lot of criticism themselves, but as long as they're not hurting anybody, I don't really have any issue with it.
Finding a good back-and-forth rhythm that's interesting to watch is hard. Seeing the work that goes into a series like White Dragon Legacy by Trip...
Wait, hell. To add on to that point, even Hollywood directors fail that quite often, actually.
Treasure Key Studios, or Revelations of the Seal of Orichalcos, which has grown so much in 14 years they had to change aspect ratios, is super charming. I think these sorts of series are cool, and I'm glad that people are willing to put in the effort to make something like it.
Exactly.
But what does that have to do with X Stevens? Well, he also made a series like this, and I think you should take a look.
With this card, Brano, your new deck is complete. Happy lover? But this card seems useless, onomatopoeia. Just play the deck, Brano, and it'll all make sense to you. If you say so.
Yeah, X Stevens Yu-Gi-Oh! Series is made by animating dolls and putting Clutch Cargo-style lips over them, and making them play Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I don't want to go on my little spiel about respecting the work that goes into these series, and then do a 180 to start dumping on this one.
You know, I literally just did that. Man, I really set myself up for failure, didn't I? I should have just kept my mouth shut and just kept on watching the video. God damn it. But yeah, I don't know what to say about this one. Honestly, yeah, I'm a freaking hypocrite. We all are, just accept it. I appreciate the process of creation, but man, this one, it just ain't for me.
So I will say that I actually enjoy watching these. The series actually does have some solid dual scripting with inventive combos for the time. You can still watch these and appreciate that X Stevens understood what he was doing and had a knack for the technology he was working with.
Okay.
At the same time, though, it's really impossible to watch these and not wonder, why? If you're the only actor in the cast, why make a majority of the characters the opposite sex? Do you not own a G.I. Joe? The storyline follows these three girls, one of them is a dinosaur, as they duel across the city as Team Bitch Slap, and become the #1 ranked duel cartel. It's like if Battle City never stopped, and life was just about wondering when a Nouvelle player was going to make you a statistic. He eventually started starring in these episodes himself using green screen, and I can't tell if that makes it more or less strange. I remember watching these videos when they released back on my mom's laptop, and watching them back, I still feel nostalgic for when tons of people were doing stuff like this, back before the idea of being cringe really took hold. And in case you were wondering, what does this guy look like naked? Like butt booty ass naked? God answered your prayer and gave you the Yu-Gi-Oh! Slut, an X Stevens run channel where he does card reviews and deck profiles. Except they're sexy card reviews.
Oh.
And erotic deck profiles. This camera tilts down, and his cock and balls become public information.
What? What the fuck? I can't, man. What the fuck did I just watch? What was that? Oh. Look. Yeah. I said it before. I really set myself up for failure there. But, like, there are just some parts of YouTube I don't go to. I think when I found channels that are like that, I think I know for a fact that I've gone too far, so I should just close my browser. Just turn off the computer, go home, go bed. Really, that's really all you can say. Oh, man. What a day. This was not on my bingo card when I watched this video. Just booted up this recording. But okay. The iceberg continues.
The Patrick Hoban to Jin cheat. Cheating in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is illegal. If you get caught. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the most complicated card games you can play, and at the same time is one of the fastest. A game that moves at breakneck speeds that expects you to do long division while making your turns. Keeping track of what you're doing is hard enough. Now imagine doing the same with what your opponent is doing. Cheating in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be both conscious and unconscious. You could intentionally bend the rules to give yourself an advantage, or you might lean on them to try to catch your breath. Unconscious cheating in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can take the form of things like losing track of if you've normal summoned or not, activating a card without paying its costs, forgetting about a lingering effect, and activating cards you're not supposed to be able to.
It's hard to keep track of.
These are things that could change the outcome of a game to a result it never should have. But a really important rule to remember is this. If nobody at the table caught it, then it was legal. Should you try to fish for moments like this? No, of course not. But if it happens, it happens. Intentional cheats get a lot more interesting.
Well, what happens then when you kind of get caught or warned of that you had done something like that unintentionally at, like, say, a YCS here? Would they then, like, have you replay backwards until you reach the point where you had done the mistake? Or would you get, like, disqualified? Or would they just say, it's alright, nobody caught that at the moment, so just keep on playing? I feel like going back and replaying it should be easy enough to, like, undo that mistake, especially if there's a recording of everything that you've done so far. But I've never really watched any of these tournaments, so I wouldn't know.
As they range from simple bluffs to mind games to flat out breaking the rules. Remote duels were really bad for cheating. It was every few days you'd hear about an event where somebody's hand would go off screen for a few seconds, come back, and suddenly a brick in their hand was replaced with exactly what they needed. One of the
Yeah, I think remote anything is always going to run rampant with those kind of things. It doesn't have to just be card games. Like, I'm sure any online tournament of any FPS game will always have at least a couple of people within the tournament end up getting banned permanently for doing stuff like this. I recall watching some videos talking about, like, worst cheaters or whatever in online video games. And you see some crazy stuff where people, like, record their screen to prove that they're not cheating, but then in their entire recording, you just see, like, you know, the hitboxes of people through walls. They're just wall hacking. And they think that, you know, taking the 240p camera that they have, the shittiest camera possible, to record their screen would mean that nobody would see it. Yeah, I don't know. There's some crazy stuff out there. And I still don't understand why people would cheat, especially not in a tournament. People are going to catch you. It doesn't work out, man. I guess the only real thing is the money. But, like, at that point, if you're trying to make money, there's probably much better ways than going to a tournament in a video game.
most famous Yu-Gi-Oh! Cheats is kinda hard to call on whether or not it's cheating, but in my mind, it's hard to call it anything else. The card Gagaga Cowboy was infamous in the game as a closer card. A rank 4 that could deal 800
Cowboy
damage
for game.
on detach. If your OTK just missed the mark by 800 or less life points, Cowboy for game ended games just one turn too soon for the opponent to come back. That phrase, Cowboy for game, became infamous among the player base as a shorthand for the game is over. Those of us who will never know the glory of heaven might have seen what the cheat is by this point, because it comes in when players would use the effect of Cowboy without actually owning the card. See, when you'd enter main phase 2 and your opponent...
Oh, so you just, like, say that you're going to Cowboy for game and then your opponent surrenders and stuff like that, but you don't actually have Cowboy in the extra deck? Oh my god. Actual mind games. Like, I mean, technically, that is cheating, but, like, your opponent surrendered and you don't have the card. You just made an exclamation. You just said a thing. You could say anything. I don't know if there's anything in particular that would be, like, illegal. I mean, I guess general good mannerisms in society would apply here. But, like, suggesting that you have a Cowboy in extra deck probably doesn't break any rules. It will make you an a-hole, though.
Was under 800 life points, you would say, Cowboy for game? And they would take that to mean that you were going to use Cowboy to kill them. So they'd scoop to get it over with.
Oh, man.
In reality, though, you were just saying the phrase, and they conceded out of the threat, when really you were just firing blanks. Another one, again, with a Wild West theme, weirdly, was Infernities. These were cards that had the potential to do anything under the sun, provided you had no cards in hand.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just empty your hand with cards like Into the Void or Phantom Hand. But what if you couldn't? What if there were monsters stuck in your hand like Beetle or Archfiend? Well, in the case of not being able to reduce your hand size anymore, a tactic some dirty players adopted was to take Infernity monsters and set them in the back row to pretend they were trap cards.
As what?
No one could check to see if you were lying or not, so you'd pop off with an empty hand, while your opponent was none the wiser that you were cheating.
Oh man, okay, well, as the opponent, yeah, there's no way you would know. It would have to be some sort of judge, you know, watching the match where obviously the camera is catching it. But man, that is actually dirty. You know, the Cowboy for Game is kind of funny, but this one is, I think, just straight up cheating.
Common way this cheat was discovered was if the Infernity player went second, set a monster in the back row, and then the opponent shotgun speller trap removal like MST. You'd shamefully send your set Mirage to the graveyard and get caught as a cheater. Then there's the big one. A cheating scandal that to this day people debate the merit of, involving one of the game's most prolific pro players. Patrick Hoban is competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Royalty. He's a multiple-time YCS winner, deck-building mastermind, and published author on the subject of Yu-Gi-Oh! With his book, Road of the King, in 2016. He's an extremely accomplished player that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on. There are those who appreciate and respect him, but then there are those who hate him for his style of play that he advocates for in his book. A style where you interact with your opponent as little as possible to not give away an ounce of information. People picking up the book hoping that it would give them an edge competitively would adopt that and make for boring games. Part of the fun of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you are playing with a second person.
I mean, it's the sense of community, right? You're sitting across the table from somebody playing a card game that you both enjoy together. It should be fun. But I guess I can sort of see that perspective where it's like, you're here to win. In fact, you want to take everything possible from your opponent in order to secure your victory. So yeah, but sportsmanship is still a thing, and I do think it should exist in really any competitive sport. Regardless though, it's a matter of opinion. I would much rather lose and not be a dick about it than to win while, you know, absolutely crushing all my opponent's desire to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever.
And if that person just keeps their head down and says nothing for the entire game, well, it's kind of boring. There was also what he talked about in his book called angle shoots. Basically legal cheats. An example would be when playing in Shaddoll format. Muttering to yourself when you lost game 1, didn't even see fusion. That gives your opponent the false idea that you're playing Shaddoll and didn't see Shaddoll fusion. Then they would side in cards to beat that. Since you're not actually playing Shaddolls, the cards they put in would be all but useless, and you could bulldoze through the next game. This is dishonest, but offhand comments like this don't really count as cheating, but they're definitely
same
lame.
Thing like
the lamest
Cowboy
of all,
game.
though, was a trick used at the ARG Fort Lauderdale event in 2015 when dueling in Necros format. Patrick would ask his opponent to side out Dijin, Releaser of Rituals. This was a card that could lock your opponent out of special summoning when used as ritual material. And in Necros format, it dumbed down the game a lot to an unfun degree. It wasn't uncommon for players to gentleman's out of cards that ruined certain formats, like Sixth Sense back in Dragon Ruler format. And similar things were done with Dijin. Except when Patrick Hoban's opponent sided out their Dijin, he would do the same. And then put in a second copy he had in his side deck. In his book, Patrick Hoban claims to have never used this at a real event, but there are multiple accounts of this happening from the Fort Lauderdale event in 2015. Now, is this a cheat? Sadly, no. It feels like cheating, but a gentleman's agreement is not legally binding, and there's no rule against this exact sort of thing.
Exactly. But it will give you a reputation. And, people ain't really gonna like you for it. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't want to be king. I don't want to be the #1 duelist if it means doing stuff like this. But maybe I'm just too honest for my own good.
Since it doesn't fall under the idea of misrepresenting the game state, which is an established Yu-Gi-Oh! Rule. The general conclusion the community came to was, it's not cheating, but f*** off. That Fort Lauderdale event was cursed too, because the second place finisher got DQ'd later on because he was stacking his opponent's deck and trying to illegally activate cards. The moral of this story is try to cheat as much as you can. Every cheat you don't try is a rule left unbent.
Alright dudes, unfortunately I have to end things here because I gotta stream in a few minutes, but yeah, that was educational, let's say. we're delving deeper and deeper into the iceberg, so we're going to get into some very strange topics here. But hey, in every community, there's going to be a really fun and good side, and there's going to be the other side to it too. So it's really nice that we have these kind of videos out there to highlight every single aspect of a community. But regardless, hope you guys enjoyed your time here, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will catch you guys in the next one.